Hey there, YouTube. What's going on? So, I got a request to do an update on the fish tank, and to be honest, I meant to do one a lot sooner. And life has been kind of crazy. So, I figured go ahead and try to get this out. And there was a request to give some information and kind of talk a little bit about what's going on. So, I'm going to do a really long video and then just kind of try to edit it into an informative bit. So, hopefully, I can get this out maybe by Monday. So this is the 55-gallon tank. As you can see, I am not afraid of leaving some algae on the tank. I actually do not at all clean the back wall of the tank except for the fixtures. The sides I let get pretty rough before I bother cleaning them, and I just do the front of the tank maybe about once a week. I gave it a quick little rub down before the lights just clicked on, just to be able to do this video. Now you're going to see some particulates in the tank right now. That's just micro oxygen bubbles. I'm going to explain why those exist here in a little bit, but we'll start with the tank. So the colony was originally 12 or 15 fish. I got 12, but I think I actually got somewhere between 12 and 15. The colony is now over 100 fish. I suspect it's somewhere closer to 150 at this point. And I know when you're looking at this, you probably have a hard time believing that. They're just now waking up. And although you see contrasting fish, what you should understand is, if I put this down here, there's movement everywhere down here. There's fry in this nook somewhere. I don't know if they're awake yet. There's fry back over in this nook. Or no, actually, I'm sorry, they're right down in here. And then there's fry back in that nook as well. And the whole tank is just movement. No fish losses to date, none that I've seen. I do have a series of events that have occurred though. So as the population has gotten larger, the water change situation has definitely had to change. And I've gotten to a point, I showed you where I was just kind of plopping a pothos in. Well, that pothos is right up here. And I haven't had to trim or cut a single leaf. So these are the original leaves that you saw in my first video of plopping in. Since then, this guy has blown up. I moved him from the 20-gallon hob over to a 50-gallon hob a few weeks ago, and it is just blowing up. I will show you what I did with that. Originally, I plopped it in water, let it get its stems, just put it inside of biomedia that was inside of the hob, and when I needed to service it, it was nearly impossible. So what we ended up doing to change that was now they're inside of bio bags. And the one in my hobs anyway are just using the expanded clay pellets. And there's also air stones going into those bags all the way at the bottom. So that would be why the micro bubbles exist. Filtration is solid on it, but it just was not pulling out enough nitrates. The levels continued to rise, and I don't mind rolling with slightly higher nitrates when I have plants, but they started to spike. They started pushing like 40 and 50, and that's when I was like, okay, time to do some changes. So I started increasing my water change routine, and I added this. I now have a planted overhead sump, and I'll put some details in about that, but essentially it sucks water up through a pre-filter that I customized a little bit, goes down into a pump, up into here, goes through about 6 inches of filtration, 5.5 inches of sponges that get smaller and smaller and smaller as you go, a half an inch of phosphate pad, basically the floss, and then 6 biomedia bags that the ones that are planted are only just topped off with clay pellets. The rest of it's all like Biohome Ultimate, lots of Secum Matrix, and a couple of brands of the Bio Cylinder, whatever the hell. So those just got planted recently in the last few days. I'm hoping that they're going to take root and start making a difference. There's 1 plant in the first bag here, 2 plants in there, and this was a stem I managed to get to actually grow. So you can see that's actually just a stem down there, and boom, So these guys are temporary. They're just waiting to be planted. I'm rescuing plants now, so that's why I got all this craziness happening up top. Yeah, it's going well. So things I've been learning. I've communicated with a lot of other people who have Maltese and are having trouble with breeding. There's a few things you need to be aware of. One, you need to have plenty of shells. I see a lot of people who are very concerned about keeping their tank a little bit prettier looking. I get it. But at the end of the day, you need to have more shells than there are fish. So as you can see, believe it or not, there's like 150-ish, maybe 200-ish shells in here. Some of them are buried, some of them are visible. Various sizes. I got some from the Gulf of Mexico and all that stuff. So you need to have a lot of shells. They're going to build peaks and valleys. I actually flattened all of that out a number of weeks ago, and it's already, peaked and valleyed again. You need to have line of sight blocks, which is why the plants exist, why I have a tall rock, and why I'm considering, when I'm going to be putting a second drain up here, I'm considering permanently attaching them to the hood just like I did the input, suspending something off of the outflow where I can grow more plants off of it and just continue to divide line of sight through the tank. See if I can make it look natural. I don't know if that's going to pan out or not. I haven't really figured out what I want to do or how to do it. So if you want to breed, that's step number one, is to make sure that there's comfortable zones, places where things can feel safe and okay. And there's a little guy right in there. Let me see if I can do this without scaring anybody. Really, 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 really young. Still like a tadpole. See him? Yeah. So what I feed these guys is 3 different types of food. I'll show you exactly what I feed them. So you can get one of 2 things, and it's really up to you on how much work you want to do. You can go with North Fin Fry Starter, or you can go with North Fin Krill Pro and grind that down into a powder. I really like this because it's a super fine powder, but this is technically this costs the same amount as this, and you get 30 more grams of it. So consider that for what you will. I then take North Fin Bug Pro and I grind that down into a powder. And then I use the Seacom Probiotic Cichlid Flakes, and I grind that down. The reason I do this is all krill, straight from the source krill, not a byproduct of krill. This is straight from bugs, and this is straight from whole fish. These aren't like, byproduct products. I don't know if when you feed cats or dogs or something, you can get chicken meal, or you can get like whole chicken, or whatever. So there's a difference in quality. So this makes sure that every time I feed the tank, there is edible food for every sized fish, that it distributes everywhere, so the people eating on further up, the more aggressive eaters, are not taking all of the food from the bottom. It also makes it a little bit more difficult with the water quality as well, so you got to feed it in small quantities multiple times a day. And I'll show you what that looks like. Hang on. So this is basically what the end product looks like, and I just use a little measuring scoop and feed them a few times a day using this. One of the great things about doing the powder is when you tap it in there, they're getting a complete nutrition. You know what I mean? There's not going to be any holes. Ooh, I accidentally dumped all that. There's not going to be any holes in their diet. It's multi-sourced. If there's preferences between the fish, they can pick and choose which little pellets to eat, although it's going to be hard for them to identify the difference. This just ensures that everybody everywhere can get food. From the bottom, you see the people on the bottom are eating, people up here are eating, even the little guys. If I can show you him right down here, he's zipping around grabbing little pieces of food. I don't know if you can see him, but he's zipping around grabbing little pieces of food right now with there's just tiny ones. There's a bunch of them in there. Like I said, probably like about 150 fish now. So it's 6 months almost to the day that I set this tank up, plus or minus a day or two. Legitimately, that's exactly the timeline that we're on. So those are the top 2 tricks. Make sure that there's divided sections, top 3. Make sure that you have more than enough shells. Make sure that you have more than enough places that they can kind of like just visually be like, okay, this is a zone, this is a zone, this is a zone. Back here is my place, up there is your place. And that will make them more comfortable in their space, less likely to have fights. Although these guys do pretty okay, there's still a little bit of aggression that occurs in my tank. And then when it comes to feeding, so this is a trick I learned from another species that was being discussed of cichlids. And the guy was discussing how in brains a lot of fish are triggered by having smaller foods, and he was talking about live brine shrimp. And he's like, when live brine shrimp is introduced to this species and many others, something clicks in their brains, especially the females, that tells them, hey, there's a lot of food, you should start breeding, there's more than enough food for all of those babies. So that's why I try to feed these guys as small a quantity as I can, as many times a day as I can, to allow them to always kind of be surrounded by food, even though I'm not putting a whole hell of a lot in each time. It has been extremely successful for me, as you can tell. Products that I've found that are very helpful. I use Secum Prime with every single water change I do. Currently I'm doing 5 to 10 gallon water changes daily while I'm bringing the nitrates back down and establishing new biomedia and plant root systems. The nitrates are at a healthy level now, but Prime is phenomenal for treating your water and getting rid of things like chlorine. Although you don't have to use it, having Secum Stability on hand is a good idea at a minimum. I add it with water changes. I don't add a whole hell of a lot, but I do supplement some beneficial bacteria to the tank system. You will have to clean your front glass a little bit more frequently because it will turn that into an occupied surface pretty quickly, and you'll see bacterial growth on there faster than you'll see the algae start trying to take it over. Like I said, I do allow algae to be there. Algae is life. Between the detritus and algae, there are calories available for the smaller fish if somebody's, for whatever reason, not getting enough food in there. Allowing some of this stuff to exist throughout the system. Having a completely clean tank is not necessarily beneficial to breeding. You want to have a little bit more of a natural environment. Algae is good. You don't want it to take over. I had a little hair algae on this guy developing. I actually had to pull that out with water inside of it because I'm not sure if there was a fish in there. Pull off the hair algae and then very carefully clean the exterior of the shell while I was holding it with the water facing upright, so it wasn't. You never know. It's impossible. I have sold some fish already. You know, these guys are pretty cool, but yeah, I still add stability to the system just to make sure. Now, Cichlid Trace from Secum is another product that I use. A really big fan of this stuff. You will end up having to deal with, and I just cleaned this off the other day. It's hard to keep it all clean, but you will end up having to deal with like some hard water looking situations where it almost looks like salt is building up on surfaces. It just kind of is what it is. That's the hard water environment that these guys prefer. And this stuff is pretty decent. I don't use it at its actual full recommended dosage, and that's just because I know that the water in here is already pretty decently hard, and my water coming out of my tap isn't too crazily far off of the mark of where I'm wanting to keep it. The Eco Rocks are adding a little bit, so I do this typically every other 5 gallons. So if I do 10 gallons, one of the buckets will have a treatment of Cichlid Trace. If I do 5 gallons, every other day, then I'll add this every other day. For your plants and algae and stuff like that, I use Aquarium Co-op products. I use Easy Green and Easy Carbon. I also have Easy Iron, but I really don't use that in this tank except for maybe once a month. I'll add a dose of iron to it. This stuff is really good. You're going to have to find a balance. That there are recommended directions on there, but you're going to have to find a balance. I've got 3 decently sized Anubias plants in here. I've got a very large pothos, a couple more in that one, 4 more up here, and other plants leaching off the system waiting to get soil, plus a whole wall of algae on the back. I don't want to beat the hell out of the algae, so I have to be very careful about using this. I just want to keep it under control, and I don't want it to to overfeed or underfeed the plant, so I got to be careful about using that. So I can't give you any recommendation on dosage or anything like that. You'll just have to figure out what works best for you. Let's think here. Do I have any other tips or tricks? Making sure your water is circulating really well but not flowing crazily over the bottom. making sure that when you feed, it's a surrounding type of feeding that can feed everybody all at once. Making sure that they have, sections, zones in the tank that are very clearly something that they could just visually be like, oh, this could be a section. Don't know if I have a lot else for you guys. I believe I showed you the fact that I was using Matrix and Biohome Ultimate in the tank. I really do believe in those. You're going to want to be really religious about servicing your canister. It's difficult to get under there, pull it out of the bucket, service it. It takes quite a bit of time, so I don't do it weekly. I typically have been doing it like once a month, and that might also be part of to blame for why my nitrates went up. So I've started servicing this. I'm going to try to service this every other week now, and see what it looks like compared now that I've got this guy up here. Again, that's like 6+ inches of filtration. It's going through under baffles. So it's going under this baffle, over the one in between here, under that one, and then over the last one before it hits several pounds of biomedia. And I actually added a whole liter of Matrix to this system, and it still has a bunch of other established media that I put in there from servicing my canister. Mix and match a little bit just so that I could seed all of those pouches. This system should start pulling nitrates out of the water very aggressively pretty soon. I may need to either resituate or get a shorter one like this guy for over top of this. I don't know. I'm going to wait and see what happens. I'm not going to commit to that. And there's a couple of things I'm going to change about the setup, but that's pretty much what I got for you guys. I'm not sure if I'm missing anything. I'll just go over all of the finalized filtration that I have and tell you guys exactly what's going on. So obviously I have 2 sponge filters. Then you have a 20-gallon hob. Then you have a 55-gallon hob. Then you have a Fluval 207, which is coming out to a spray bar. And then you have the overhead planted sump, which is being run by an I think it's called an Eco Plus Eco 396, maybe. Let me double check. Yeah, an Eco Plus Eco 396. It's doing a fantastic job, and water is evaporating a little bit quicker from the tank. It's happening at a noticeable rate. It's also coming into winter, and the air is getting drier, so I'm not sure whether it's the time of year or the new addition that has increased my evaporation rate, but I'm going to have to be mindful of that. Listen, guys, if you have any questions at the end of all of this, if there's something I missed, or there's a question that you have, or anything you want clarification on, any information that you've heard from me or from somebody else that's conflicting with something else that you know or thought you knew, feel free to comment. Let me know whatever it is. I will. I'm happy to discuss it with you, and if I can help in any way, I will. I also, if somebody can help me in any way, I'm always open to it. So, like I said, if there's something that I'm telling you that's conflicting, or that you can see that I can improve on, just let me know. I'm not sure what else to say. I'm not sure what else to add to this. I'm trying to make sure I do as long a video as possible so that when I sit down and edit and go over all of this stuff, I don't go, oh fuck, I missed this piece of information. You know what I mean? The lights that I'm using are Nicru. They are full spectrum LEDs, and I can switch them over to blue spectrum. I know that looks very purple on the camera, but it's very, very blue. That's also a Nicru. Same thing, it's just the shorter versions. I don't know what else to say, so I'm going to end the video. I'm pretty confident I covered everything that I could. Again, any questions, comments, feedback, feel free to comment. Please like and subscribe. If you have any friends that are considering getting a species like this, feel free to share the video with them. And we'll see you guys in the next update.